The example I would give is of an experience, a really great urban experience, cultural experience, is in New York, and it's the High Line. And this was a disused, derelict railway that ran through the city, virtually unnoticed by people who below it, because it wasn't used anymore. And 10, 11 years ago, two men climbed up onto the High Line and saw this incredible linear park, this meadow on this old railway line, punching through the city. And 10 years later, it's become the second most visited cultural centre cultural attraction in New York, with 4 million people a year just going there not to do anything but just walk through the city, elevated above the ground. What it's done is kicked off hundreds of millions of pounds worth of regeneration, because with it has come the creative economy, boutiques, shops, restaurants, cafes, artist studios. So as this place has become reinvented by this cultural line, all sorts of other things are happening as well. And this big thinking tied to little things is what I'm particularly interested in. And although we know Red Bull sponsors sport, and a lot of adventure-based sport, extreme sport, they're also now sponsoring youth culture. So in London, there's the Red Bull Academy sponsoring 15, 16-year-olds with skateboards, with rapping, graffiti, art, and so they use that material inside their marketing as well. So there is quite an interesting series of relationships between luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, Red Bull, Nike, all starting to use culture as part of their way of diffusing perhaps this slightly early noughties version of the global image, where we don't think anything's original anymore. It's made in China. Everyone can buy it in any shop anywhere in the world. That's really changing. Big ideas mean about collecting people together to make a big statement. I don't think no longer can you just have one hotel doing something on its own. I mean, you can do that, but it's kind of almost irrelevant. You need 100 hotels all joining together and doing one thing as a collective. If you're a small town, you look for your natural assets. If it's the river, that's what you do. The artisan experience is becoming really important. The fact that you know where you are, that the thing you're buying is sourced locally or made by a craftsman, or comes out of a factory or a place nearby. I think it's becoming more and more important. And what art does, culture is a catalyst. Art isn't the answer. Art is a way of creating a slightly more left field a way of seeing something differently. I gave an experience of Southwark in South London, where we found 15 theatres, all quite near to each other, but they weren't part of any particular group. When you start looking at the theatres and think, well, what else comes with it? You get set designers, textile designers, fashion designers, prop designers. Suddenly you have 80 to 90 businesses. You join them up in a particular way, and suddenly you have a new theatre district. So I think a lot of cities can really look more imaginatively at their assets and start to map it. They can start to create a sense of something unique, but then they need some trigger. What's the trigger to make you suddenly go, oh, the new theatre district in London, or the big food festival in Prague, or the jazz festival in Reykjavik? You know, who starts that off? And usually it's the state, but I think increasingly it's more private businesses grouping together. The best examples, as you would expect, are obviously the big cities, and the sort of global club of cities, which would be Tokyo, New York, London, Madrid, Milan. You know, they're cities that perhaps are aware of their cultural assets. They know that they've got great theatres, opera, music, but they're also investing in architecture in the urban realm, in places. It's not just about the state putting museums and galleries in. It's about the whole city being almost like a kind of theatre, that when you walk down a boulevard, or you sit in a square, or you have a coffee by the river, that you are really feeling that you're in an exciting place. So I think they do that because of scale, but the sort of smaller cities are beginning to wake up to the fact that they all have unique assets as well, and that's the key. You know, all over Europe and Eastern Europe, we've got these incredible cities with great architecture, really interesting people, and it's trying to pull out some of their the uniqueness of that place. Artisans, crafts, artists, writers, and so on. It's up to now, it's very much been that you wouldn't see those people in the street because they're not part of the vision of the city, and it's this idea of mixing everything up, multidisciplinary use of culture, architecture and place.